Welcome everyone to the Grand Finale of Sri Lanka Meeting Fest 2021. I'm glad to invite the Prime Minister to open case beside government. Here.
Starting my speech in three, two, one. Finally, we live in a world where we romanticize the idea of romance. We were so obsessed with the idea of finding the perfect partner or a romantic life to be able to lead that we're so obsessed with starting the rest of our lives or getting old with our partner that we've forgotten that we are young and need to enjoy our life right now, or to be able to happy in our present with being single or being in like multiple relationships, etc. Right? We believe this romanticization of romance has created multiple problems that I'll be talking to you about in my speech, right? But before that, what is self-partnership and what is the world that we visualize on site government? It's quite simple, right? We believe the status quo right now is a world that promotes the idea, and this is according to context, so don't challenge this, it promotes the idea that any source of happiness is only true source of happiness till the time it stems out of true love or finding the perfect romantic relationship with a partner where you can eventually go ahead and get married or even have a kid, right? We believe that self-partnership is a concept which is unlike this concept, which goes ahead and says that this is not the only source of true happiness that you can find in this world. And you can be in a relationship with yourself, you can have a romantic relationship with yourself, you can focus on loving and focus on being able to grow within yourself. And this is not necessarily something that you have to go ahead and do with your partner, right? But then two things on this, right? And this is especially to Opteam, right? Any world that Opteam goes ahead and defends is a world where you do go ahead and consider that true love is not the only source of happiness in the world, is the world that they're going ahead and defending. So they have to go ahead and debate this motion in a clear binary where they have to go ahead and defend the idea that it is okay to have things like norm, which literally go ahead and propagate the idea that true love is the only source or one of the most important sources of happiness. Second, if that team really goes ahead and squirrels with the definition and goes ahead and says that you can have a world where there are no norms, I'll give you two reasons of mechanization why it is important or the only essential way in which a world can exist where you do have norms, right? First, you believe human nature works in a manner where you try to define things that are normal behavior or normal conditions, right? So any world can have like different sorts of norms. We agree with that, but there has to be a norm because it's very humane to be able to define what is normal, and that's the reason why society exists and societal conventions exist to begin with. Second, we believe if that is what Guff is going ahead and proposing, we believe in a world where they don't define what the norm is, it is going to be the most strongest community that goes ahead and defines the norm as it exists in any society. Which means if they go ahead and make the mistake of not defining what norm is on their side, it will literally be the heteronormative, monogamous norm that religious sanctions and societal sanctions go ahead and promote. We beg that they go ahead and set the definition on side opposition. Post that, what are the three things that I'm going to argue to you on positive in this case? First, I'll tell you why like people who are single are much likely to be happy being single, and considering that's a lot of us, considering this is a capitalistic world and we're pushed out of like joint families, we're living alone and we're not able to find partners. Secondarily, I'll tell you why how you go ahead and evaluate and judge relationships in our world is something that is much better off and it's easier to walk out of toxic relationships. And thirdly, I'll tell you why this is also a world which is much better for people who are asexual, aromantic, or in homosexual relationships, or in generally for women, right? But first, in terms of how does this norm propagate itself, right? We believe the moment you go ahead and you watch movies since when you're growing up, or you read novels, or you visit dating apps, or how dating apps go ahead and advertise themselves, is that you, or even like religious sanctions and religious myths, they literally go ahead and tell you always that you are incomplete if you don't have a partner. That is, so you're only whole if you find your other half, and that is the only reason why you can be happy. Or it is something like even if a character is happy being single in a movie, it will always end with that character realizing that they were wrong and they're much more happier in a relationship. What does this necessarily do? We believe that in the status quo that you live in, where you have to live alone because of working conditions, because you can't live with your family, you have to move in other cities, etc. People always find themselves to be alone, even in like in their college lives, etc. Right? We believe on op world, what this necessarily does is it makes those people constantly question themselves, right? Because it tells them that you are incomplete if you haven't found a partner, right? That you have to go out on the street or on those dating apps and continuously and effectively look out for partners if you want to be whole, if you want to be happy. Otherwise, you're just a loser. What is happening on site government, right? Since self partnership is the norm, you consider that it's perfectly normal for you to be in a partnership with yourself and be able to have the time to go ahead and love yourself, invest yourself, and be able to grow within that paradigm, right? And this is also not a paradigm of extreme loneliness. And we beg that Op doesn't argue that, because you have social relationships like relationship with your family, with your parents, with your friends, with acquaintances, teachers, professors, etc. Right? So I believe it's not like you're completely lonely. It's just that the factor of absence of romantic relationship or a sexual relationship in your life is not the guiding factor for you to be unhappy. In second, what we're going to argue to you, right? Why do we believe that you better judge relationships, the value of those relationships in your life when you have the world that we're preferring on side government? Simply because additional social factors or familial factors or your friends going ahead and tell you something that why are you always single, etc., don't pave the way into you going ahead and judging the value of a relationship. Then the only way of judgment for your relationship becomes how well am I able to love myself and the other person, how happy am I in that relationship, how well am I able to incur some degree of growth when I'm with that person. What does this do? Basically has three impacts, right? First, we believe the threshold at which you accept someone as your romantic or your sexual partner increases multifold on side government, because you're not in a hurry to get into a relationship that you accept or lower your standards for someone, which literally means that of course you'll be in lesser number of relationships throughout your life. But even if you have lesser number of relationships, you have to deal with less breakups, and most those less relationships will be much more loving and meaningful to begin with. But second, in terms of how you behave in that relationship, we believe another problem of status quo or thinking that true love is the only source of happiness, what it necessarily does is that it makes you believe that if one person will come and change your life or be the person that you grow old with, because it's going to be a permanent relationship and be the source of all happiness in your life, and suddenly you're not sad anymore, which means that you levy so much expectation on yourself when you interact within that relationship, but also on the other person, that you're not willing to compromise, because you don't understand that the other person is also a complex individual, right? You just think that their role in your life is to go ahead and provide fulfillment and happiness to you. I believe at this point is when relationships become extremely toxic, where all you have is like expectations but not being able to voice your expectations. At a point you voice your expectations or have you in a minor conflict, you think that it's okay to go ahead and break up and walk out of that relationship because it's always supposed to be happy, right? We believe this is what decreases the permanency or the sort of stability that you can have in relationships. But thirdly, when it comes to exiting relationships, we believe it also decreases the threshold at which you can exit relationships. The moment they stop making you happy, you simply go ahead and exit them. This decreases the capacity at which women find themselves in toxic relationships. But finally, this is a better world, and Op takes a hit on like asexual, aromantic people and gay people, because you constantly tell gay people like, oh, if you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you're not gay enough. The only way you can prove your sexuality is if you have a partner. Or you tell asexual and aromantic that this is not something that our society sanctions. So this is not the normal way of being. On our side, however, these people are considered to be absolutely normal people, and we believe that women are able to decide when they want to get into marriages, are not called out to be like abnormal because they're not married or banned simply because they're not married. Because of all of these benefits, we are very, very proud to propose.
Thank you for that speech. And we now invite the leader of opposition to further side opposition. Here.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we don't think they can come here and argue that self-love or self-partnerships are the only way that people can achieve true happiness, right? But before I start, few clarifications. We think this debate is a comparative where you talk about what you prioritize in terms of seeking self-worth, right? Because we think a norm is essentially a narrative that society sets, which creates an aspiration for us in terms of what we want to get self-fulfillment, right? On Gov, they have to tell me why you need to deprioritize the idea of true love and what are these other things that you prioritize instead. On Op, we have to tell you why we want true love to keep a priority. That doesn't mean that other things in terms of achieving self-fulfillment, such as me having a career or hobby, don't exist. True love is the only avenue to self-fulfillment on our side, but we do agree that it's a priority, right? Firstly, we think when they come and tell us that, listen, on their side, when they devalue true love, they'll value self-love. What essentially happens is a conflation of self-love with self-partnership, right? What does this mean? This brings a performativity aspect to self-worth, which is to say, now for me to prove to society that, listen, I am a self-confident young woman, I necessarily have to be and project myself or posture myself as a person in a self partnership, because that's a basic way of proving to other people that I have basic self-worth, right? This is an aspect of performativity that they themselves concede to when they come and tell us in PM that, listen, gay people are often had to prove their sexuality and perform, like do this performativity aspect to prove that they're gay, which by the way is false, because a lot of gay people are closeted and they're not actually free to perform their sexuality out in public because they can literally go to prison, right? But what is the alternative that we defend on our side? We don't defend status quo, of course, because we think that heteronormativity is imperfect, right? We want fluid partnerships wherein people can obviously want to, like, wherein people's main idea would be the pursuit of true love. However, they can go between partners, they can have multiple partners, they can have a single partner, they can be in a gay relationship, etc., etc., right? That's what we defend on our side. But let's talk about this idea of norms existing, right? We don't think norms can exist in a vacuum, which is to say, when heteronormativity was a vacuum, was a norm in relationships, we had this world wherein marriage was a way of doing property transfer. When self-love, or when true love, or the idea of finding love became the norm in society, then we had things coming up such as co-parenting or same-sex marriages, right? Because understand that the basic rallying point that LGBTQ people use for acceptance in society is this idea of finding true love and having no boundaries on true love, right? So we don't think they can claim LGBTQ people. But what I'm trying to prove with this idea that norms don't exist in a vacuum is that when they essentially go ahead and devalue connection or true love, what they essentially do is also devalue the human connection, right? Why is this important? We think at a point in time where you devalue this idea that for me to fulfill my basic human instincts, I need some sort of connection with other people. You make people have to look inwards all the time instead of outwards for love or any sort of validation or any sort of like feeling things or being fulfilled, right? What this essentially does is devalue empathy in our lives, right? And we think empathy is the basic tenet of why people would say, for instance, care about climate change or care about gay rights, right? We think what they essentially have to defend is this idea of always looking inwards for self-fulfillment and how it won't spill over to society, in the sense that the rich people walking down the street can say that poor people should just get a job and do things for themselves, right? Because we think that's a big harm that comes out of their side. But let's talk about self-love, because we think their side essentially conflates self-love and self-worth. I've already dealt with this idea of performativity, right? And I'll give you a practical example of how this happens even in status quo, right? Wherein women feel the pressure of having it all when they have to be successful in their careers and have a great family, etc., etc., right? We think that essentially is the burden that performativity can put on a person, right? But let's also understand why we started valuing true love under capitalism in the first place, right? Because we don't think that people like Lizzo or people like Emma Watson are the primary stakeholders in this debate, because they're the outliers. They are people who can afford to always love themselves because they've achieved certain sorts of material success or certain sort of self-fulfillment comes to them from their careers. We think the rest of the people in the world have to work shitty 9-to-5 jobs, and the reason that they value true love and status quo is because they come back and they want something to look forward to, because their work essentially can't provide that to them. Given that they can't change the capitalist setup we exist in, this is something that they have to defend, right? Because how does self-love manifest on their side of the house, right? What is self-partnering? Self-partnering is being with yourself on the time, having hobbies, going on vacations alone, or pampering yourself, right? All these things involve money, right? We think only privileged people can do that, and we think that's something that they have to come here and defend, right? But let's also talk about the idea of self-worth, right? We don't think it's possible for everybody in the world to always think that I am enough for myself, right? We think sometimes people do need external validation because they might be suffering from material failures, right? We think the only examples that they give are people who have material success. We don't think people with material favors can necessarily always be positive, right? Because we think this is a huge problem. We think they have to come here and engage with the idea that not everybody all the time can be positive, and essentially when you are in a partnership with a person, the person can provide you love and nurturing and support when you're at your lowest point, right? Who does that? Because I've essentially told you that we don't think on their side they can argue that your friends will always do that, because for your true love or your partner, you were always the priority. Your friends can have other priorities, right? And we've already told you how human connection is devalued on their side. But let's also talk about the idea of pressure that self-partnership can create, right? What is toxic masculinity? Toxic masculinity is literally men not being able to have a normal conversation about their emotions with other people because they feel the pressure from society of being self-fulfilled all the time, or being independent all the time, or being sorted all the time, right? What are the harms that come out on their side? Firstly, we don't think they can argue that, there is a good exiting point on their side, because people will still continue to remain on bad relationships on their side. And I tell you why. A lot of marriages are practical arrangements, right? We think when the alternative on their side becomes self-fulfillment or self-partnership, a woman in a bad marriage who does not have a career cannot exit from that marriage because she most certainly can't afford to live alone. We think on our side, when you have things like fluid partnerships or the idea that a woman can divorce and get into another marriage, we think that is possible, and we think that gives you an exit point, right? The second thing is this idea that people continue to always base their happiness on themselves, right? We think that's a problem. That's a problem essentially because people on our side of the house, people can essentially move through partnerships and like have different sort of partnerships and use those relationships as a means to grow and learn from other people. And we also think that that can increase the threshold for happiness, right? Because we don't think when you're isolated or when you're alone all the time and have no new experiences with other people, you can continue to grow, right? And we also think there would be a backlash on their side of the house, which is to say from say heteronormative people who will say that now self-love is not about self partnership is not about self-acceptance, but literally being against the idea of true love. We think these harms are something that they necessarily have to negate. They have to come and tell us that they can't come and tell us that, listen, we'll give you time off, right? Because on their side there's no time off because there's no relationship. On our side you can still have fluidity and have time off. With that, proud to oppose.
And I thank the leader of opposition for the speech and now invite the Deputy Prime Minister for the side government's case. Here.
I'd hate to be that kind of guy who goes in a finals motions and says, please read context, but I have to be that guy. What we get from opposition is a complete rejection of what comes in the context and what comes in Tejasvi's speech. With that, if their definition is incongruent with both context and Tejasvi's speech, they were allowed to def chal, but in the absence of that, they need to accept the definition, not even given by us, given in context. What does Nikita give you? She says that we have to defend deprioritizing it on the, except the deprioritization is very specific. We don't let them make it ambiguous so that Archit and Ajat can sway it in the op block. They will muddy this debate, so let me clarify this from the get-go. What we oppose is quite simple. A world in which your happiness isn't solely, note the word solely, predicated on romantic love and children from those relationships. That is it. Second, Archit, no, nothing in the chat, please. Second, this norm is then upheld by institutions of power such as religion, state, society, and companies that create this narrative as that this is the only way you ought to exist. This is what we oppose. What this results in is deviations from this norm, for instance, in the sense of different gender roles, or in the sense of different sexual orientations, or even masturbation or other sexual activities are considered to be evil primarily because of this major norm being construed. I'll take you at the tap. Now, what do we propose? We propose a world where romantic love is not a societal compulsion. One is free to pursue what brings one happiness, including romantic love. Note, we don't have to argue for a world in which people don't seek relationships at any point. What we argue is that that's not the default instinct. That isn't that default in the sense that you have to be in a relationship. This is the only way that you can get happiness. If you don't agree with me, read context. Now, what do we get from them after this? They say extension to LGBTQ rights can happen by expanding the idea of true love. First, look at our paradigm in which true love or love as a concept isn't the only societal compulsion. As such, there is no particular reason to have a barrier towards entry for any particular thing. When something isn't that important in society and there aren't legit 1,000 institutions upholding that narrative, there is no reason to have barriers to that particular segment. In which case, expansion to the LGBTQI isn't even a conversation because there's nothing to restrict, nothing is holier than thou in our paradigm. Then, what do we get from them? That on our side of the house, we'll devalue human connection. Complete and utter bullcrap. I'll tell you why. Because their idea is this, that if you aren't seeking romantic relationships, you're incapable of human contact. They go further to say that you can only find comfort in a partner which will never be provided by a friend. We reject these things. And the reason is this comes and stems from a narrative that true love will solve all and that true love is the only person that can understand you on what's happening. They go so far as saying that you can only care about the polar bears and the environment if you're in a relationship or you care about romantic love. How ludicrous is that? Aromantic people are climate change advocates as far as I remember. Finally, they say that toxic masculinity is a result of this particular narrative. They say that men are told to be self-sufficient, women are told to find true love. First, inconsistent. This is about a definition which is true for every single individual. In which case, we think toxic masculinity is a result of this true love phenomena. Where does toxic masculinity come from, and what is it that they have to contend with? First things first, toxic masculinity goes as far as creating an incel who is simply an individual who's frustrated at failing at a task he's been given. Society right now views finding love as a task. This task is what your success is predicated on and failure is predicated on. Society judges you on this basis. When Nikita says that only Emma Watson and these people are and like elites are able to escape from this, it's because they first have to establish that they indeed are worthy, and the stopping being a relationship by choice is when society accepts that. Without that, if you're not in a relationship, the default assumption is that there is something wrong with you, and that is something that we abhor. What else is it that they have to what they have to contend with? The idea of loneliness. It's simply not possible for everybody to be in a relationship or find the kind of relationships they need. What does that create? In a world in which people aren't comfortable being with themselves because they're told that you have to find true love, they will enter a relationship. Even if they don't want to really, they will enter it. Why is that the case? Because if you are judged on whether or not you're in a relationship, and you can project to the outside world that you're happy, everything's great, but internally things are toxic. You're having sleepless nights, you hate your partner, but on Instagram, all the lovey emojis are there. That is the kind of paradigm that exists solely on their side of the house. In that case, what do we get? We get a toxic dynamic which isn't predicated on a mutually beneficial relationship. The benefit comes out of societal validation, and that is problematic. Society validates you on the basis of sticking with the person that is causing you torment. We think that is something worth of abhorring. Now, what else is something something that they contend with in the debate? Those that do find true love, I think those cases will be looked at special cases of people that are lucky and have been successful in a paradigm. Understand this. We don't say at any point in time, true love is bad. What we say is you shouldn't blindly pursue it because you're likely to not find it in the first place. Now, those people that are in a relationship, not for the reason of societal pressure, because the societal pressure doesn't exist in a paradigm, they exist for a reason. That reason is what they find in that relationship. So what Tejasvi says about quality of relationships being higher, even though the quantity may be lower, is very valid, and that is the paradigm we defend. Before I move on, quick POI.
As far as societal pressure is concerned, on your side, where the dominant idea is self-partnership, a person who's incapable of self-partnering and wants to actively go and partner with somebody else, that person will be hounded. Defend that.
I legit just went over this. If you find someone and you want to be with that person, you'll be considered lucky. In the sense, you found someone that's worthy of being with. You are happy in that relationship. There's no pressure in being in that dynamic. You're doing that by your own volition. In which case, you won't be hounded in any way whatsoever. Understand this: self-partnership doesn't compel you to be alone. At no point does it do that. It simply says you don't have to blindly pursue the idea of true love in order to be content with yourself. In that regard, there are a few other things that they have to defend. The idea of loneliness within relationships, which is when an opt-out becomes impossible for partners because of the backlash they'll face from society from exiting that. They'll be viewed as lesser. In which case, look at the kind of people that are pressured into relationships. Women that are approaching their biological clock, they're forced to get married around 30 or before that because otherwise they won't be able to have children. They're forced to be this way by media. They're told children's stories. They're told in the movies that your wedding will be your happiest day. You'll have children. You'll be happily ever after. Except that is a lie that is told to you. Think about it. You've been in relationships. You ought to be in relationships because you want to be, not because of societal pressures. The idea of self-partnership forces you to find comfort with yourself and perhaps find it in somebody else. Their side compels you to be with someone you don't want to be with. Proud to this.
With that, we would like to invite Deputy Prime Minister, we'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to extend case inside opposition. Here.
Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, so as Aditya was saying, I should read the context. Let's go back to it again, right? Self-partnership is the act of being single and sort of dating yourself as being self-partner. So if I'm dating myself, I cannot objectively go date someone else. So while the debate might be muddy from our side, I just want to tell everyone, CBS doesn't usually debate like that, but that's totally cool. Two things. First of all, we go ahead and talk to you about what are the binaries in this debate. I don't think it's a binary per se, but it's like two sides arguing different perspectives to status quo. Status quo says Archit has true love and Archit will try to pursue true love with person X. Gav has to argue that Archit needs to love Archit and Archit does not need to pursue person X. What opposition is arguing to you is that Archit has person X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. right? So Archer does not just stop at person X, right? And these people who are A, B, C, D, F, G can have different orientations, can have different values, can have different goals. But what it enables Archer to do is that in case his partnership with X doesn't work, he realizes that he can move on to Y and he can move on to Z because society won't judge him. On their side of the world, when Archit fails in a relationship with Archit, society will be like, bro, you can't make yourself happy, then what kind of a person are you? Because all the burdens and all the harms that come from the second speech are exclusively to the idea of something being a no. Because if outliers are criticized on our side of the house, outliers are criticized on their side of the house also, right? Because if you go ahead and don't achieve this idea of love with someone else on our side, they say, oh, you look down upon. But if someone doesn't get seen as someone who can love themselves, then also you get looked down upon. We think that's lying. Like that's the debate, right? The harms of something being a norm aren't what this debate is about. This debate is about rather what kind of norm you would prefer and which norm society as at large goes ahead and moves forward. But let's go ahead and understand what the clarifications were about, right? Because we wasted a lot of time on that, right? Number one, side opposition does not need to defend you status quo, which we aren't doing, right? And even though Tejasvi wants to push that burden on us, that's not what we're doing. What it talks to you about is a world wherein we move from status quo and a world which we prefer wherein people are given the ability to continuously evolve their desires and continuously move forward to the next person and not stuck up in one position. In their world, humans are told your happiness relies on yourself. And even though it might sound ludicrous to Aditya, that tells people you are self-fulfilling. You don't need other people. You don't need to care about other people. Only you can make yourself happy, which means that now everyone in society sees the norm that 100,000 people are loving themselves and not caring about other people, because that sort of translates into other things in life also, right? Which means that when I go ahead and buy a jean, I will be like, oh, it's fast fashion that I love, and I only love myself, and only I can bring myself happiness. What impacts others is something that I don't care. This is an outcome of less interaction and less vulnerability between human beings, right? Because you aren't truly vulnerable with your friends as you are with the partner, right? As you try to be vulnerable with that one special romantic one that you might have, right? We think that is something that they have to go ahead and rebut, that individuals at large try to prioritize themselves over everyone else, right? And that becomes the norm on their side of the house. And we think that is something that harms all kinds of social movements, and not only social movements, but the change that you're trying to bring about, because you want people to be slightly less selfish, right? And we think that's the world that they have to defend on their side. But what we also think that they haven't engaged with is like this idea of marriages being practical engagements, right? Individuals are continuously told, and people might be pressured into marriages, right? On both sides of the house. What happens on their side of the house, women who are pressurized into marriages will be told, oh, I see everyone else around me finding love within themselves. Okay, so I will also find love within myself. Why do I need to move out of this relationship, right? On our side of the house, that woman will be told, screw person X, move on to person Y, move on to person Z, because that's what she sees people around her doing, right? And we think that's a positive narrative for women and people to move out of toxic relationships, right? We don't think they've engaged with that. But also beyond that, we think, what is this debate positively about from side opposition, right? We think that if they're arguing that people can be unhappy on both sides of the partnership, right? On their side and our side. That's a concession that both sides make. So if people are unhappy in my partnership, which is to say with person X, I will say, okay, I'll try find person Y. But if I'm unhappy with the relationship with Archit because I can't self-partner and I don't think that I'm continuously happy, I will blame Archit. I will be like, I can't find happiness within myself. And if I can't find happiness within myself, how will I ever find happiness? And we think that cycle of self-blame and individuals trying to erode their own value for themselves and their self-confidence takes a huge hit on their side of the house. But also, we think what's also important is that humans start realizing that they're not means unto themselves, which is to say humans realize the value of caring for other people, right? And we do realize that they say, oh, you can care for your parents, for your friends, etc., etc. But that special bond is something that's so valuable that teaches human beings to go ahead and deprioritize themselves at some points, but not always, right? We think once something becomes a dominant norm, outliers will be excluded on both sides of the house. But we do think outliers will be slightly lesser on our side of the house, right? Because if they say that people who are asexual and people who probably don't fall under the ambit of even heterosexual LGBTQIA plus communities, they will be ignored, right? Then we think on their side of the house, people who fall outside the ambit of asexual and other communities that probably don't follow relationships will be ignored. So we don't argue, first of all, it's for majoritism. No, that's not it. But we do think that the world will continuously evolve to a place where individuals and their choices of not being restricted to themselves or one person is something that's supported from all sides of the house. Before I move, I'll just take your POR.
considering on your side, monogamy is not the norm and people can literally switch between relationships. Why not in terms of self-partnership? You can move from self-partnership to being in a partnership with someone else or have both of these relationships together.
Okay, so yeah, let's come to that, right? I think you have, as you need to decide one thing. It's either Archit and Yash that are lying, or it's Tejasvi and Aditya that are lying, right? Because Yash's clarification and spending 15 minutes on that clarification was that Op can create a world where individuals go ahead and realize that they can have fluidity in relationships. So our model isn't that Archit only has person X, but a norm where Archit sees 10 other individuals having relationships X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. On their side of the house, the norm is you only see Archit loving himself, Ajat loving himself, Nikita loving himself, herself, which basically goes to show that individuals are pressured into loving themselves and not out and not looking outside it. And failure to do so is looked down upon on their side rather than on our side, because failure to do so on our side can be defined as searching that someone else, right? But on their side, it's called unhappiness with yourself. People will say, okay, go ahead and improve yourself, go have a hobby, go do something else. If you can't make yourself happy, how will you ever contribute to society? We think narratives like those will push people actively down on their side of the house. But let's be crisp with burdens in this debate. What does Gov have to do? Gov needs to tell you that the world will be a better place if people self-partner, people like Emma Watson who say, I will date myself and nobody else, right? I'm happy with myself, which means you don't get into relationships with other people. Read context. If I'm lying, then Yash is also lying, right? But beyond that, what we're going to argue to you is saying that given the freedom to move continuously out of relationships, out of monogamy, people will go ahead and search for that true happiness and that for true love and for the idea of always trying to make themselves happier. And we think that's a better world to live in because we don't want people to regret themselves. We think that's pretty amazing, positive on our side, extremely proud of us.
We would like to thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for their speech and now invite the government whip through excellent inside government here.
The fact that Archit has to use optics in the 4th year of his debating is beyond me, but we don't think that that's going to win him the debate because we think that the adjudication panel has grown far more smarter than when he was in his first year, right? So let's move on to some sort of like constructive analysis, not even analysis, some sort of assertions that come from Archit's side, right? What does he go ahead and tell you? He says that on their side of the house, like the idea that you cannot move on from yourself means that you're literally stuck with yourself, and that's a source of unhappiness for yourself, because at least on their side of the house, they can move on from one person to another person to you, right? 2 questions to that. Why does that necessarily lead to happiness? In the idea that when I go on from one person to the other person to the other person, in a most conventional sense, that sounds like a very unhappy person, right? So tell us, why is it that that's necessary? And we think op whip is too late to do that. Second idea that they go ahead and talk to you about is that the idea that like human beings cannot love multiple people like on itself, right? At a point of time where I'm unsatisfied with myself, irrespective of having like say a romantic relationship or not, because we don't understand why happiness is only a result of romantic relationships. I can look on to other relationships, for example, the one that I share with my parents, or for example, a casual relationship that I share with someone else, where I don't have a tag of being associated in a unit with them, right? It's not that human beings cease to have a relationship which gives them happiness in a way that you can move on from one friend to another if you believe that your friend circle is toxic enough in a way that it's not helping you, right? But irrespective, note what Nikita says in her speech, right? She tells you that Emma Watson is privileged, and therefore like the reason she can move on to this is because there are things that fulfill her, which is career, which literally means that at a point of time where something is not fulfilling me or it's not fulfilling my happiness, I can look on to other means. So in their paradigm, if you can move from one person to another, in our paradigm, you can look to other sources which dictate your happiness in your own sphere, which means I could literally join a dance class. I could literally take therapy for myself. So there's nothing which prevents me from moving on to different paradigms of happiness for myself. That's not something that they can go ahead and defend in this debate, right? But what is the other thing that they go ahead and tell you in a farcical idea, right? They say that you can't, like we tell you that you can't, like when I'm in a relationship with myself, you can't date other people, right? The idea in the motion, if you read the context, says that we have to necessarily defend the idea that this is not the only path to happiness, which means that you can still opt out of this. And if you find true love, you can go ahead and identify that love. So of course, I'm not asking Archit to cheat on someone and be double dating himself and someone else, but the idea that he can opt out of loving someone else is something which is necessarily true. Then their idea becomes that there's going to be like you want to share vulnerability with someone someone else, right? Tell us this, why is this vulnerability exclusive to romantic relationships? Why can't it be shared with parents? Why can't it be shared with a casual friend that I have like on the side of the sea, right? Except that they go ahead and tell you that social movements require empathy, etc., right? It's not like unmarried people can't empathize with social movements in general. And therefore we think that the idea of like building empathy is something that you develop throughout the course of your life. At that point of time, we don't see why social movements and the empathetic idea is something that is exclusive to them, right? But norms 101, right? When someone makes a choice which is outside of a norm, we agree with them that that's assumed to be breaking the norm, which is why you're pushed out, right? But the idea is that that position has to assume the choice that you're making to be shameful, which means that if heteronormativity is the norm and I am a homosexual, then I'm breaking the norm, because the assumption in heteronormativity is that homosexuality is something which is shameful. The difference between this and why that shame will not occur is because self-partnership does not stigmatize love, right? It says that that's literally not the only thing that you can go and do, but if you find it, then that's sure, like that's not the only way. So we don't see that how they can accrue, like they can draw the idea of like normativity literally leads to burden on other individuals in this debate, right? But what are some of the burdens in this debate that they had to go ahead and fulfill, right? One, the vague idea of fluidity that you talked about and don't explain what this fluidity, what in the world does it mean, means that they had to go ahead and tell you how this vague idea of fluidity like as a norm can exist, considering in our first speech we tell you that normative, like the human behavior is normative, and at a point of time where your behavior, states, ritualistic stands, etc., as agencies continue to exist in society and continue to yield power in society, because it's not like the church vanishes on their side of the house. Why is it that this fluidity is something which is even possible as an alternative to this kind of a norm? And why is it that like this kind of a norm in terms of heteronormity will not be imposed? This is we're too late to reply to something as constructive as fluidity and defining what that fluidity even means in this debate. And why is it that like true love is literally a priority on their side of the house, considering that we're telling you that there are other sources of happiness? Either they prove to you that true love is the only source of happiness and fulfillment that an individual has achieved, and in the absence of which they can't go ahead and take this debate, because that's literally the fundamental of this debate. But we go ahead and tell you certain benefits of like self-partnered relationships, right? Self-partnered relationship do not expect you to alter your goals, aspirations, happiness, right? Which means that you're much more happier with yourself, because you don't have to devalue yourself at all points of time. The reason people switch from one relation to another relationship is because they literally don't find the continuum in themselves, right? At a point of time where I'm allowed to prioritize myself, I'm allowed to shift goals in general, I'm allowed to prioritize my career, I'm allowed to make the choices that I want to make, there is a greater likelihood that I'll actually be happier with myself. Which means, and this literally disproportionately impacts women who are asked to prioritize. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
When you go about changing the dominant narrative and making it prioritize self partnership, you have to devalue the value that true love or that sort of special human connection can add to you. How does that not spill over into general people not valuing connection?
Okay, I got your point. One, you don't have to go ahead and devalue love, right? The context literally tells you that's not the only form of love. That means that I have multiple options, in a way that the assumed idea is not that I have to go ahead and marry, but I will marry if I want to marry. I don't understand why I necessarily have to devalue marriage for this norm to exist. The norm literally dictates that this is not the only way to derive happiness, right? Stop skewing the definition and deal with the best case scenario on side government, in the absence of which you've already lost the debate, right? When you go ahead and talk about like, when I go ahead and tell you how it disproportionately impacts women on their side of the house. On their side of the house, child rearing impacts, career deprioritization are things which necessarily impact women, right? But also what self-partnership ensures you is the ability to not be pressurized into choosing like an end to yourself, in which means that you can find a felt movement to yourself. When Archit says that you can move from one person to another, who is dictating that choice? It's not you. The person who's dictating that choice is a situation which like propels you to say that you're not fulfilled, and this is the only way to go ahead and exist and find fulfillment in a society. Which means that women are pressurized by ideas of a biological clock, and the emphasis is placed on finding a partner specifically in cultural contexts like India, where women and their agency and the ability to emancipate their potential through things available to them, for example career, goals, etc., is not achieved. Which is also why they're like stigmatized into saying breaking homes, etc., which also means that people in relationships, and like when people ability of people to opt out of relationships is much more, which means that the fear of like say divorces, of keeping up toxic relationships relationships is something which is reduced on our side of the house, and the harm of staying in a relationship is not anchored, which also means that you destigmatize things like masturbation, etc., where sex is not only seen as a sum of procreation. You destigmatize ideas of asexuals and like aromantic individuals having to prove their claims in society. At that point of time, we think you have a much better and, so to say, fluid world when that's not the only norm, and self-partnership is the norm, and you only opt for romantic relationships when you actually truly find them. We don't think in our world is an absence of like absence of love, care, etc. We don't see why that's exclusive to romantic relationships, or if it's too late to go ahead and make a case on their side. Thank you.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think Navneet doesn't do what she was supposed to do. Engage with the burden that she had. Because at no point in time, Navneet being a fourth-year debater should go ahead and misunderstand the burdens, at least in a debate. Here's the thing. The burden is simple. They can't slide their way in this debate by saying self-partnership hogi, but at a point we're having self-partnership. When we find love, we will engage in love and we will be in a relationship. Till then we don't find love, we will be in self-partnership. That's a very convenient stance to take. If that's the debate, then we have nothing to say, because obviously it's better to probably be in a self-partnership than be single grade, if that's what they want to assume. Because on our side of the house also, you can probably take breaks, etc., and then probably go to the other person or and start a relationship with other person. That's the thing that's available on our side. On their side, you have to exclusively defend that you partner with yourself and you start dating yourself. That's what they have to defend. And that's a dominant narrative. Once that is a dominant narrative, that is what you have to pursue. They can't defend both and everything. That's not what their burden was. But secondly, societal pressure. Societal pressure is the wash in this debate. Because on our side, if people are pressured into being into relationships, because relationships are considered to be good and fancy, whatever, on their side, self-partnership will become fancy once it becomes a dominant norm. It becomes a norm, it becomes a dominant narrative to begin with. Therefore, society will pressure people who want to be in relationships or who can't partner with themselves because they're just unable to do so, to be in self-partnership things. Societal pressure is a wash in this debate. That's not a voting metric again. But here's the thing. Navneet claims that jumping from one person to another makes it unhappy. No, we think it's a better thing, because once you stop deriving happiness from a single person, you go to the other person in order to increase the amount of happiness you got from the person you were previously with to begin with. On their side, at a point in time, you don't find happiness within yourself, or you stop finding happiness by the self-partnership arrangement that you're in. Where do you go? You can't go anywhere. Now they can't say, then you enter into a relationship, because then they're practically arguing the same side. They have to be clear about the binaries. That's where they lose this debate. But secondly, then it becomes, oh, if you're having issues, if you want to talk about things, if you want emotional support, parents are there, friends are there. There are a lot of things that you can't discuss with your parents. If I as a gay child can't come out to my parents because my parents are conservative and probably beat the shit out of me and probably ostracize me within my own family, it's something which I can't talk to about my parents. But I can talk to it about with my gay partner, because that person understands my lived experiences and also understands the point at which I come from. That person can give me comfort that I want. That person can give me the love that I want. On their side, these kind of conversations can't happen, because there are certain things which you can't discuss with your family and friends, because you're too scared of the kind of repercussion that will happen on you, especially applicable to minority groups and sexual minority groups, especially to begin with, because we think you only have such discussion people you have complete faith over, or who aren't as conservative. And we think mostly in a lot of families, parents are conservative because they don't belong to a different era to begin with. We think they have to engage with those nuanced examples as well. But here's the thing. In finding Navneet's speech, I think it's also matter loss for them, apart from method loss, apart from matter loss. She says self-help has this benefit that you don't need to alter your goals. You don't need to go and divert your attention from your goals, and you can do whatever you want to focus on your thing. We think there are several people who are in relationships and are also killing it in their professional lives to begin with. We think relationships only make your professional life easier to deal with, because at a point in time you're sick and you have to complete a project. If your partner can get you coffee and make breakfast for you, that's a big boon for you. If on their side, if you self-partner, you don't have anything to do. If you're living alone in the city, you can't expect your friends to leave their jobs and come and do something for yourself. But you can expect your partner who can still do it for you, because the kind of emotional and intimate connection that you share with your romantic partner, which can't be compared with friends. If their argument then becomes friends is equal to romantic partner, then this debate can't exist, because then you literally can't argue anything. That's the comparative. On our side, they haven't shown you that why being in a relationship literally goes and distracts you so much from your goals that you can't focus on your life, that you can't make time for yourself, all of that jazz. But then, this whole example of, somehow if you self-partner, masturbation becomes acceptable. The church being conservative operates on either sides. If the church tells you can't do that, that's something which you can't do on their house also. But secondly, this whole idea of somehow women are being pushed into marriages because of patriarchal setup that operates right now, on their side, once you self-partner, it will vanish away. patriarchal forces don't vanish away. You can prefer a world of that, but patriarchal forces don't vanish away. If they can vanish away, tell us how they'll vanish away. We'll give you the debate. But till then, you can't tell us how those patriarchal forces vanish away in your world. You can't say women will be stopped. Women will be stopped from being pushed into these marriages. But what's the thing? And then they go like, oh, if you're feeling lonely and thing, go for therapy, go for dancing, etc. Inexclusive can happen on our side. Go for ASME dance class, go for ASME music classes, go play sports. It doesn't work in most cases. Therefore, you need people. That human touch is important. That's why people sometimes, and also inaccessible. Therapy literally costs thousands of rupees per sessions. A lot of people can't afford that. A vast majority of people can't afford that. Come tell me how you can go. Nuke, bolo.
What is so exclusive about romantic relationships other than sex and irrespective of sex that you can't derive out of friendships? For example, vulnerability, talking about issues, even with your gay friends. Why is that not possible?
Speech or no? Here's the thing. Pay attention. Here's the thing. I've already clarified why there's certain things which you can't discuss with your parents. There are certain emotional needs of yours which you can't discuss to your parents because you're too fearful of being judged or your parents going ahead and reacting in a certain way. Your friends, you can't expect your friends to prioritize at all points in time because you don't share that kind of an emotional romantic connection with them. That's what additionally happens on our side of the house. But here's the thing. Number one, first question that you ask yourself, where is the achievability? What is the achievability of self-partnerships? On their side, we think achievability is very, very restricted to people who are already having very fulfilling lives or fancy lives like Emma Watson and those hotshot people who are already having that material success to feel confident about themselves. A lot of people, what Nikita analyzed in first speech, are people who are struggling in their lives and going ahead and having failures at every point in time. These are people who are victims of capitalism and the oppression that comes with capitalism to begin with. These are people who lost hope in themselves. It is extremely difficult for them to self-partner with themselves because they need an external person to go ahead and make them believe in themselves. On their side, they force that person to go ahead and get it from their own selves when their own self tells them that you suck. But if you have another partner of yours or a person who knows you that well, knows you so emotionally well, who can tell you that apart from all of these things, there is such good to you and who can show you that ray of hope in the dark moments, that's a better thing. The accessibility to relationships is better and therefore the achievability of having a partner is better on our side. But lastly, values such as empathy, etc., can't be nurtured on their side because when you only learn to care about yourself, take care of your needs, you are completely divorced from taking care of somebody else's needs, prioritizing somebody else's emotions over you, going ahead and listening to somebody else's rant and their emotional rants which they are going ahead and subjecting you to. That ability to have empathy is nurtured on our side when you have partners to begin with. But lastly, and here's the most important argumentation, there are women today in rural India who are simply in marriages where they have to stay in those marriages because they're financially being supported by the husbands and they have no ability to earn on their own. On their side, if you go ahead and make this the norm, these women might be subjected to going ahead and forcing themselves to be like in a self-partnership kind of an arrangement where they can't sustain themselves to begin with. On our side, even if you're in a toxic relationship, our alternative is not status quo. Our alternative is where it's completely acceptable and justified for you to switch from one partner to another without any value judgment being passed on that conversion, on that transition of yours. That's the alternative that we defended. They had no objections with that. Okay. So those are the this debate on sheer lack of understanding of burdens. Thank you.
Let's ask the opposition before the speech. Now my opposition will reply here.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Go. If in my fourth year, I want to come and debate at SRDF because that's a dream that I've had from my first year. It's something that I can do in both sides of the world because avenues of access to finding happiness outside of partnerships exist on both sides of the house, right? Because SRDF doesn't stop existing if Archit loves himself or Archit loves Ajat, right? So we don't think that they can argue that self-love is something that's only self-love is something that's connotative to self-partnership, right? But they can still go to spa, they can still go for massages, right? But where do things start changing? If, finger crossed, I lose this final, right? I have to tell myself, Archit, it's okay, you've lost, or Archit, why did you lose? But in case I'm not able to come up with an answer, I blame myself. I blame myself for not being able to make myself happy, and I have no opt-out out of that mechanism, right? Because side government has created a world where Archit is, the dominant narrative around Archit is that Archit needs to love himself and needs to date himself as per the context, right? But what happens on Ajat's and Archit's side of the world, right? If, for example, Archit loses this debate, right? Again, fingers crossed, Nikita comes up to Archit and says, Archit, kuch nahi hota. There's always another tournament that you can do. And while that may not offer a lot of hope, but while that may not offer a lot of hope, it again tells Archit that there's a special connection with another human being who will create certain value for him, right? It tells Archit to stop questioning himself and that he is not responsible for making himself happy, right? And that is where the entire idea of individuals blaming themselves for their failures comes out, right? Because capitalism fails a lot of people, right? Capitalism fails people who are poor. On their side of the house, if you're sad, you would blame yourself for that failure, right? Because you have no one to tell you otherwise. On our side of the house, you have someone to tell you otherwise. Because the idea of friends is something that's inexclusive on both sides of the house. But we do realize on both sides that there is some exclusive value that comes from relationships, either with yourself or with some other person. We think that's the binary that they need to tackle on their side of the house. But let us understand what this debate is about, right? I think as an individual, on both sides, you need to understand we're arguing literally the same benefits, right? It's slightly muddy in that context, right? We think that we're also saying people will be happier. They're also saying people will be happier. And all the harms and benefits are an outcome of something being a dominant narrative rather than us preferring something, right? And I think all of you would agree with that. So if that's the case, how do you adjudicate this debate? I think the fair way would be to go ahead and realize that one side had to argue that you are an end unto yourself. You can't date anyone else. Because if I'm loving myself and then I start dating Ajat, I'm not self-partnering myself with myself. Ajat becomes my true love or Ajat becomes my relationship. That's the concession or the contradiction that you penalize side government for. Because if they want to argue that you wait, then do something, you wait, then you do something, then you're not self-partnering, right? You're not dating yourself. You're literally dating someone else. We think you penalize them for that. But beyond that also, we understand that humans require empathy, right? Humans realize that there's that special touch that we have with each other. And in the absence of us trying to navigate through those turbulent emotions and trying to find remorse or recourse in that, we tend to realize that we're ends unto ourselves. We don't care about others because we've been told that if you love yourself, that's the dominant narrative, right? Because we think when this motion came out, everyone realized that the world in which people at the end of the day tend to be happier is the world we all want to live in. The world in which people realize that people deserve to be happy, and in case they're unhappy, there's an opt-out out of that unhappiness. We think that government has painted to you a world where there's no opt-out, which means if you're happy, great, we support those people. But in case you're not, you don't have anything to step out of that dominant narrative because you looked down upon and you can't move out of that, right? But beware, we're not defending status quo, right? Because we think that's slightly unfair, right? What we're defending is the idea that if I fail in a relationship, I go looking to and realize that I can find my happiness somewhere else in another human being, in another relationship. Because I realize the value of human connection and that intense connection with another human being can give me some happiness. Therefore, on their side of the house, even if 9 people are in a self-partnered relationship, because that's the dominant narrative, if 5 of them are unhappy, they can't move out. In Archit's world, if 10 people are in a relationship which is fluid, which means they can partner with 10 different people, they tend to have an alternative. And with that, we're extremely proud to take SRAF home. Extremely proud to oppose.
Thank you for that, Archit. And I now invite Government Report Speaker, Yeri.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm really sad that I have to refer to context. I almost feel like I'm not debating against a fourth-year debater, but a first-year debater is why probably in the last 4 years he didn't win SRDF. Simply, what does context say? It says single positive people are rejecting the notion that true love is the only path to happiness. It nowhere says that single positive people literally means that you can only love yourself and you can't love anyone else. This definition literally means that you don't stigmatize the idea of true love. You just simply say that this should not be the sole definition of success in your life, or not the only thing that you're looking out for in your life. We are okay if this is a dominant narrative in people's lives. That is to say, when people are single, they don't feel bad about themselves. They're not constantly looking or hurrying into relationships to get into bad relationships and constantly switch partners. Why is it a benefit on op? It's really taxing to go through breakups again and again. Like, look at what they're arguing, right? It is okay on our side to be single and consider that you're dating yourself. What does that mean? That you love yourself. You invest in yourself and not in another partner. When you're single, you say that your growth is important. Your positivity in your eyes is something that is important. I don't understand why that is so difficult to understand. But what do they say? True love is a priority, and this is leader of opposition definition. If they had a problem with that definition, make a def chat or at least refer to context. If you don't do either of these, then by conventions, judges have to accept PM definition. That's the rule. They're already out of this debate, right? But then why do you go ahead? Why do you want true love to be a priority? We say it's difficult because of two things. First, because it's really difficult to find a person who fits your perfect image, right? Because there are so many people who have different expectations from relationships, and the only way you find true love or define true love is that they are ideal person, right? We don't think that can happen so easily. But secondarily, what's even more terrible about prioritizing true love is that you make the source of your happiness an external entity and not yourself, which means you lose the autonomy on making yourself smile or feel good about yourself. The only way that you can be called beautiful if your boyfriend calls you beautiful, but you can't call yourself beautiful because self-love is such a bad thing, right? To which they say, what if you can't love yourself? But that's the same burden of which they never satisfied, right? When do they tell you that what happens when you can't find a partner or you're single, right? We're literally giving you a coping mechanism for the times that you're single. And in PM definition, I tell you, you're more likely to be single considering you live in a capitalist world and you don't have time to invest in relationships. We believe on a net, people are much happier for the longest time on our side. But this is where they get really funny, right? Because the second argumentation is, people will become inward looking and not care about the climate. I mean, that just means that human beings are capable of caring about one thing. This means that if you're in a heterosexual relationship or if you're married to someone, you can't be an ally to the environment. What kind of stupid logic is this? The second thing that they go ahead and argue is that when you're in a self-partnership, you can't go ahead and date anyone else because you're loving yourself. This again means that human beings are capable of only loving one person throughout their lives, which means if I love my parents and my friends, I can't have a relationship again because I can't love two people at a time or more than one person at a time. Again, flawed logic. We don't understand what's the constructive. By obvious, their constructive becomes, oh, there's a special bond. But before obvious, they never tell you what that special bond is, right? Why is that special bond only existing in romantic relationships? Why can't you share things with your friends, with your parents, with your family? What is the basis of that special bond? Before obvious, we get nothing. I'll also tell you what we get in obvious is extremely ridiculous, right? But what are the benefits that we tell you that they never engage with? The first thing that we tell you that these relationships tend to become toxic, to which they go ahead and say that a gay person needs a gay partner to be able to share their emotions. Why can't that gay person be their friend, and why can't you then share your emotions? Why can't your late night coffee be given to you by your family member, your mother or your friend? Why do you need a romantic partner to go ahead and do that? To which Azad says, you know what, partners are important because they will always prioritize you. They will always make you happy, and they will be a ray of sunshine. Exactly what I pointed out in PM speech, right? That you have such great expectations of a person is why you become uncompromising in relationships and why you have huge expectations and they become toxic. If that's the definition of a good relationship, they have already lost the debate because these are huge expectations and nobody can ever go ahead and meet them and nobody should be expected to. The second thing that we go ahead and say, and this is where they also lose the debate, right? They never tell you why do romantic people, asexual people feel like they fit into the world when in their definition considering true love is a priority. They never tell you why women can exit toxic relationships. They never tell you why women are not pushed because of biological clocks to go ahead and have kids, etc. On those multiple metrics, we are very, very proud to propose.
Thank you for that. And with that, we come to the end of Sri Ram Debating Festival 2021. This is the final debate, and thank you so much, guys, for joining in. For those of you who do not know, this is the first time that Sri Ram Debating Festival was open to fourth-year debaters, which would be saying like when we were open to institutional and as well as cross teams, and we've already seen how fun that is. But thank you so much, guys.